I don't think in the history of Stories of Hope have we ever had a couple. Mamash just got married. What is this, day 9?
Yeah.
My family's from Mexico. When I was 24, I went to Israel. I ended up making Aliyah. I stayed there for 7 years. And then I said, I'm going to go back to LA. That's when, a year later, boom.
You know, the stars aligned. It feels like a miracle. And I've tried many times, and I've been dating since I was 18 years old. So when you're 33 and it still hasn't happened, you don't give up, but you're like, what are the chances that it's going to happen now? And it was very, very, very challenging. The hard part was not the gigs, it was the personal life. It's after the gig when you come home and you're alone again. And tomorrow morning you're going to wake up alone again. It was brutal. You know when I knew? I looked in Ashley's eyes and I knew I was going to marry her. There wasn't a slightest doubt about it. That's the one. This is meant to be.
Welcome back to the Stories of Hope podcast. This week we have a couple literally fresh off the Mayflower wedding boat. It's the one and only Yoni Z and Ashley. Yeah, I guess Yoni has his own last name that Ashley just got. We're really excited to share this episode with you. You're going to love it. It is filled with so many beautiful surprises about this special couple that many of you probably never heard before. So get excited for another very special episode brought to you by our lovely guests and our amazing team. Now, summer is approaching. Yay, finally. And there are probably so many things that you want for that perfect barbecue, for your kids, for camp, for yourself, for those rain days. And you know what I'm about to say. There's a one-stop shop for all of it. Check out the PZ Deals app. You can find different things based off of their categories they have, whether it's children, homeware, food. I know they even have food, clothes, whatever you want. They have it. A speaker, pool supplies. It's all there. And if you see something you want, you let the app know that your eye is on it because you want that cheap deal. They'll reach back out to you. So you don't need to wait on lines. You don't need to return a product because there's a better product elsewhere. All you need to do is download the PZ Deals app because with PZ Deals, you'll never pay full price again. You know, on this show, we talk a lot about choosing paths that work for you, not what's expected, not what looks good on paper, but what actually makes the most sense for your life. And that's especially true when it comes to college and career. So if you're at the crossroads, or maybe you're pivoting into something new and you've never ever considered going into computer programming, software development, IT, or even cybersecurity, then this might be for you. Because I recently found out about Woodmont College, and they offer a bachelor's in computer programming that's tailored for our community, and not in just a check the box kind of way, but in a real, relevant, respected way. It's a from online college, legit. Not some degree mill. You're learning real skills that are used on the job starting from day one with high-level practical skills that will get you a career that can support a from lifestyle. Super realistic. And what I love about it is that it's flexible. You can literally start anytime, even this week, and you can transfer in a max amount of credits so you're not wasting time or money. And speaking of money, it's way more affordable than you think for this kind of a degree. Plus, scholarships are available, which makes it even more accessible. So if you're someone that's looking for a career that's in demand, that's flexible, that actually pays well, check out Woodmont's College BS in computer programming. You'll find the link in the show notes below. This could be your next move, and it might just be the smartest one yet. So check it out for more details in the show notes below. Hi, I'm Tzipora Grodko, and this is the Stories of Hope podcast. I don't think in the history of Stories of Hope have we ever had a couple. Mamash just got married. What is this, day 9?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, day 9.
I'm honored.
Couldn't miss it.
I am honored. Everyone has been so excited and eager to hear your story. I've received messages and WhatsApp messages and text messages. And I think my number is private. So I was pretty shocked. And I remember thinking like, well, guys, give them a chance to breathe.
Thank you.
And then, you know what? I said, I feel like I can't breathe. So I'm just going to reach out and ask Yoni. And if it's crazy, I'll say, Tzipora, like, cut me some slack.
No, but
and
right away when we got engaged, I told Tzipora, I'm like, we're officially engaged. Please come to the engagement. So
it was very
We're
kind.
happy you reached out.
It was very kind. I'm so excited. And I know that people are on the edge of their seats. So a lot of people know Yoni. Listen, he's a superstar on social media, top in the industry. Ashley, everybody wants to get to know you. And today, I think a lot of people are also going to be probably pretty surprised when they get to hear you share your experience of dating in such a public light and what this process was like for you. So I want to hear your story. Before we jump in, I first want to ask, how old were you when you met Yoni, and how old were you when you met Ashley?
I was 33.
33.
Yeah, I just turned 34 this year. So
Happy
we're the same.
birthday.
We were born on the same year.
Yeah. Ashley's a few months older than me.
Aligned with our theme.
Exactly.
Amazing. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. So Ashley, please bring us back. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Of course. So I'm Ashley. My family's from Mexico. So generation after generation, but we have family from Spain. And I grew up in the States pretty much, went to school, in grad school. And when I was 24, I went to Israel and I ended up making Aliyah. I stayed there for 7 years and things were just, going amazing. And then, I had to shift gears. I ended up going to South Africa for 6 months. And that was a beautiful experience. And then I said, I'm going to go back to LA. And when I went to LA, that's when a year later, boom.
Yeah. That's when the shidduch came in.
Well, you almost sound Chabad since you listed 3 countries of residency in the last 60 seconds.
That worked out.
Were you raised religious from Mexico?
No, not religious at all. And when I was in grad school at CSUN, Cal State Northridge, I met Rabbi Heimbrook. And he was the one that, it was my first Shabbos meal there with a bunch of college students, over 100 people.
What was that like?
It was amazing. I had never experienced something like that. And to sit there and to see the kids helping out. I see people giving Torahs. You see people not on their phones. And I thought it was so beautiful. And I said, I want to know more. And everyone laughed and said, oh, it's not as easy as you think it is. And I said, I don't care. I want to know more. And, a week later, I was listening to the shiurs that they were having on campus. And after that, I said, I'm making the switch. I'm going to Israel. And no matter what it takes, I'm going to live a Jewish life. And there you go.
Yoni, tell us a little bit about your background.
My background, I grew up in Crown Heights. My family eventually moved to Muncie. When they did, I moved to Florida. And my brother and I lived there for 3 years about. He, Baruch Hashem, got married, met his wife on J-Swipe, which is also funny because it also aligns with Stories of Hope. It was like she was from Muncie. We were in Crown Heights. The family moved to Muncie and they moved to Florida. And for some reason, Hashem wanted that they, in the 50-mile radius of J-Swipe, they had to meet in Florida, not in Muncie or anywhere else. But after I had the horrible accident that I had in Rome a few years ago, that forced me back to New York. And then once I came back to New York, I had to go through a lot of rehab. I was living with my family in Muncie again. Once that was done, that's when I started looking for community. I moved to the Upper East Side, where I live today and where we live today. And I became the chazan of the shul there, the Altnoi shul. And yeah, that's more on the personal side of things. Usually people asking me about the music, but that's really kind of the personal end of things. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I remember your horrible accident. I believe that you were supposed to play at my brother's wedding.
Oh.
Yes. Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
We heard the news, and that must have been such a crazy chapter to have to navigate.
Yes.
Independent of anything else we're going to talk about today.
Yes. 100%. I'm I'm a lucky man. I'm very lucky. Thank you, Hashem. I really, really am.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
And before we get to Ashley, I first want to jump right in and ask you, what was your experience like navigating through the shidduch world? You met Ashley at 33, and you're such a public figure. What was that like?
What was it like?
You had resumes from what, like everyone kept throwing at you.
No, there was a lot. Look, I mean, Baruch Hashem, as far as the shidduch scene went, I was popular, but it doesn't matter if you're popular. It's finding the one. It has nothing to do with how many people go to me like all the time. Yoni, like you have a shidduch with me, just pick one. And I was like, it's not how it works. And I've tried many times, and I've been dating since I was 18 years old. So, when you're 33 and it still hasn't happened, you don't give up, but you're like, what are the chances that it's going to happen now? And much less for a guy who's never been engaged before to a girl who's never been engaged before. So like, it's a huge blessing, and I'm just like, I usually have so much to say, and I'm almost quiet now. Like I'm like, now that we're married and I'm sitting here, it's just such a shock to me, all of it, that it actually happened, Baruch Hashem. But yeah, if there was, if we can inspire anyone to see it the way it happened for us, which is two people at 33 for the first time. And, I do really, really feel that Ashley is my soulmate. It's not like the kind of thing where it's like, we both settled. I don't think either of us feel like that at all. So it's, and, just reflecting on what Ashley said, many people, a lot of times, like people would go, Yoni, it's going to come. And I said to myself, okay, then, but Hashem, why are you making me wait so long? And in hindsight, it makes so much sense because Ashley had to go through her journey.
Correct. We were not ready. We both hadn't put in work.
If we both had met 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been a shidduch.
Right.
Meaning it wouldn't have, but Ashley had to go through her journey and went through Israel in 7 years. And I had to go through my things for us to meet at 33. And then it all, the stars aligned, so to speak. So it feels like a miracle, but it also feels like Hashgacha Pratis, like, of course it happens when it happens, but it's so hard to see that when you're single. And I know that struggle for so many years. And one of the things that Ashley and I want to involve ourselves very much, and already are, is setting up our single friends. And we're doing it and like consistently checking out.
I mean, you never know where it's going to come from. So
yeah, I mean, for us too, like I was doing shidduch dating. I was also meeting people on my own. And then like someone through her, Yehudis Orloff put her resume on Adopt a Shadchan. And then Rayleigh Horowitz saw it and went, hey, that's a good idea for Yoni. I never thought in a million years that my 33-year-old self would get set up by a shadchan. I was like, that's when you're in your 20s that works. When you're 33, what are the chances?
Right, you kind of get tired of it after a while.
You lose faith in the system and in shadchanim, and again, not to chas v'shalom put shadchanim down, but it becomes very, very tiring for both parties, for the shadchan and for the people dating. So,
but they don't give up, and that's the beauty.
No,
of it.
and
they still are there.
Yeah, and we really have to thank Rayleigh Horowitz, Yehudis Orloff, and Bluma Florence, who really is the one who got us to the finish line. She coached me the last few years through dating. Ashley met her. Ashley fell in love with her. She fell in love with Ashley, and then they started talking on their own as well. And then she kind of was the one that like helped us gain that clarity, like you guys are meant to be together, and you're nervous, so it's hard to see it. But as you get older, it's scarier with age.
Totally.
And she kind of is the one that made us both realize, like, yeah, this is meant to be. So we're very grateful to all the parties involved.
Wow. It's like so interesting because you covered so many trigger buttons where you shared that it's just difficult. It's just difficult navigating singlehood and staying hopeful and relying on a process that you almost think like, well, I've been doing this for so long, it doesn't seem to be working. Maybe I should try something else. And at the same time, when you're on the other end, it's so interesting because when you left to get coffee, Ashley was saying, there's always a plan. And she literally just said exactly what you shared, where it's amazing to be able to see that in retrospect, how, well, these pieces weren't ready yet. So the puzzle couldn't be finished. And I want to turn to you, Ashley. What was it like when you were dating in the Orthodox world? What was that experience like for you?
I mean, when I was in Israel, it was more just like through mutual friends. So there wasn't much meaning or thought put into it. And I think it wasn't until I went back to Pico Robertson that I was living there in LA. And I was introduced to Rabbi Yoni Quinn, and he really helped me to kind of start putting things into perspective. It's about living a life not of pleasure or any of that, but a life of meaning. So what does that look like? And, really start asking yourself these questions. Most times you just think of, I want to get married and that's it. And life isn't about that. It's not about dating. It's about getting married, right? So you really have to think and put these pieces down and sit down, grab a piece of paper and work with people who have more experience and to really help you with that. Because I think before I was just doing everything very wrong. And, once I started to get my resume down and really think about like, what were my non-negotiables?
Did that seem like a very weird experience for you?
It was very weird because now I had to really think about it. You can also put a list of like 100 things. And then I remember the rabbi telling me like, Ashley, you have to be realistic with yourself. Like you have to narrow it down. Like there's no such thing as perfect. You're not going to have a person who's going to meet.
Other than Yoni, of course.
Right.
Perfect for her.
There's no such thing as perfect.
Yeah, I am perfect.
We're perfect. We're still work. We both work. You're always going to work on perfecting yourself and make yourself a better person, which is one of my things on my list. And so kind of really narrowing it down to what were the most three important things in certain areas really helped. And, then it was also being selective. Like, who do you go to for the shadchan? You just don't go with anyone. Like someone who also gets to know you, someone that establishes that relationship, who can really vouch for you and say like, this is how she is when she gets mad, or, she deals with it very well. How is she on a Shabbos? How is she, just on a day-to-day basis? And I think that really helped me to navigate that and to really have open dialogues with also, I had a dating coach as well, which was Charlie Livovics, and she was in La Brea. And I also sat with her and kind of talked about these things, like, what am I looking for, right? Because you do get a lot of suggestions and everyone thinks because you're nice and bubbly and outgoing that anyone can fit those shoes. And you're like, I have to really sit and be honest with myself, like yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was hard, and it took a lot of time. And also being very receptive to what other people had to say, but also being very, also listening to your intuition. And I think that's like a key that sometimes we forget. And knowing what you feel when you're, getting these resumes, or like, it's very important.
Yeah, it sounds like you had enough self-confidence to choose the right people that could support you in the process.
Right.
Which unfortunately, sometimes it makes sense if someone's less experienced. If they're younger, they think other people should dictate their process.
Right. Most times you get friends, and the friends are reflecting their fears or whatever happened with them. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned throughout this whole process was really having people who have more experience, who've done this several times, who are able to guide you in that. So it made all the all the cloudy stuff just be very clear.
Yeah. Oh, that's all we want.
Yeah.
And when you were going to gig after gig and you're attending a wedding, and maybe you had just gone on another date the night before that didn't work out, did that affect you in any way?
Well,
assuming you're a human being?
This obviously happened hundreds of times. Between the gigs and the dates the night before and the hopeful date the night after, perhaps. I'll tell you the truth. A part of it felt very hard, but I really, really chose to not focus. They always say, like, what's better, positive thinking or not negative thinking? And it shows in studies that not negative thinking actually gets people further than just being optimistic. Like avoiding, and for me, it was like not negative thinking. So every time I got up in front of a chazan kala, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is such a lie, but it's not. I really felt their simcha. I looked at them. I looked at the chazan's face. I looked at the kala's face. I'd see the tears. I'd see the joy. And I'd just be like, I'm so happy for them. And me, like, it'll come when it comes. It's not a contradiction. I remember I set up my sister with her shidduch. I kind of made her shidduch, and so I was making all the phone calls. I was doing all the research, and my father sent me like a long message, like how proud he was of me for putting my feelings aside. And I'm like, Abba, I gotta be honest with you. I don't know. It doesn't. I never registered it that way. The hard part was not the gigs. It was the personal life. It's after the gig when you come home and you're alone again. And tomorrow morning you're going to wake up alone again. And that can be and is debilitating for me personally. It really, really, if people look, like a lot of people ask me like, Yoni, why haven't you put out music in the last while, like new music? And I'm like, I knew that if I just keep going at this rate, I'm just going to burn out, and I needed to focus on getting married and honing in on that. So now there's a lot of music that's going to be coming out, Be'ez Hashem, but I had to take a break from everything to clear my mind and create these pathways in order for this to happen. Because, you know, people, when you're single, there is so much pain, and people, and that's one thing that Ashley and I, we promised each other and ourselves that like, we'll never forget that pain that our friends have gone through, are going through, and that people, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, will go through in the future, because shidduchim is a very complicated process. I think that, you know, there's a lot of judgment passed on single people, particularly at a certain age. Like, one of the things, and I'm sure you've experienced this with other people as well, is people think that after 30, like, people become less religious. Like, and it's like, and people thought it about me too. And it's like, I didn't become less religious. It's simply like, when people don't realize, when you don't have a community, when you're not yet married, you don't have a husband, you don't have a wife, you don't have someone to go to Megillah reading with, you don't have someone to do, you know, the smallest, I don't want to say smallest mitzvahs, but like those things like Megillah reading, or like things like
the family things,
making
right?
making sure to eat in the sukkah, you know. And there's a part of you that I think that it's very important. I really want to say this, that people should not judge single people for seeming to be less from. It's just that there's a part of their psychology that's going, I want to do it, but I want to do it with someone. And you almost don't want to do certain things because you don't want to do it alone.
Right.
And I think that people miss that very often. And they go, you know, they'll say about guys and girls, like, you know, she went to SEM, she was here, she was there, but now she's chilled out a bit. And it's meant to be offensive, but
instead,
like,
invite her over, invite her for Shabbos, invite her to your house.
Yeah, do things like that. Don't, you know, like, create moments that they feel that they do feel a sense of family and community. For me, a huge turning point was moving to the city and becoming the chazan at the shul, because girls used to tell me all the time, like, do you have a rav? Do you have a community? And I was like, no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, because when you're single, you just wear who, what? Like,
yeah, you don't have community.
You don't have a community. I think that's something that people overlook so much about single people. Like, oh, you don't take yourself seriously enough. You know, the guy doesn't wake up for shul on Shabbos. She, you know, she doesn't take, you know, if she missed lighting Shabbos candles, like, you know, she doesn't really care. And it's like, it's hard to light Shabbos candles every week and just be like, when am I going to do this for two people? It's hard to go to Minyan in the morning on Shabbos and be like, when am I going to do this knowing I'm coming home to Seudah with my family? And just people have to really ease up on the judgment that single people face, especially people who, with all due respect, if you didn't experience it and you got married in your early 20s, and I hope you did, and it's brutal.
It's so brutal.
It's brutal. And people just have to be kinder to single people and stop judging them so much, because
Instead, help them. That's what I think is more nice.
Just be there for them, you know? And the more of a support system you are to single people, the higher chances there'll be that they'll be like, you know what? Like for Ashley, for example, Ashley told me when she went to LA, she didn't really have friends. Because her friends were all in Israel. She was there for 7 years. So Ashley was hanging out with families. But then Ashley...
Yeah, every Shabbos, it was a different family. So I was...
and it's hard...
they were adopting me, but they were also like thinking, like, who can we set you up with? And you didn't feel alone. Like, you felt included. You felt... You also learn from these families. Like, what is it that I want in my house for when I get married? You know? So it really helps you to have this sense of calmness despite, like, not having the other person.
It feels so welcoming to have someone welcome you into their home.
And I think that was the most beautiful thing. And I really encourage others to do it. And I think that's something we also want to do, because
we already started.
Yeah, like it's very beautiful, and we're all about hospitality.
I wanted to see how much, like, I'm a little crazy. Everyone knows that, my life. And I kind of put Ashley up to the test. And 2 weeks after we met,
it was your birthday.
It was my birthday, and I hosted an oneg for like 70 people.
Wow.
And Ashley just got on board, and she's like, all right, I need to go to bingo. I need to buy this. I need to buy that. I need to buy that. And I'm like, she can keep up with my kind of crazy.
She's a rock star.
You're a rock star. Well, because you remember what people did for you. And I think it's important to always remember that and to give it back as well, right?
You know, it's the crazy thing is that at that oneg, I got up there. Now, mind you, the oneg was called for like 10 p.m. So we all finished our meals. And then we came to my apartment where I hosted it. And Ashley was running the kitchen like she was already my wife. God bless her in the best way. She's such a rock star. And I got up and I made an announcement because I just felt like, why not bring some Kedusha into the room? And I said, if anyone didn't yet hear Kiddush, I appointed someone to make Kiddush. And then I said, if anyone didn't yet wash,
Wow.
we got a bunch of challah rolls in the kitchen, just go, right? And if I tell you the amount of people that got up to go wash, and not because they're not from, because they didn't have a meal. They didn't have it. The amount of people that got up to hear Kiddush and were like, shh, I need to hear. I didn't hear yet. And it's 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And that's not a sign of lack of frumkeit. That's pure pain and loneliness. So to all you married people out there,
open your door, grab a seat, and invite someone single.
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative that you're bringing this up. I've been waiting for someone to talk about this topic,
Really?
and there's no one better to do it than you. So just keep going. We'll be right back to our episode. But first, you have to check out Pizza Biza, making fresh, hot pizzas on the spot by their professional chefs, indoor or outdoor in their pizza ovens, meat or dairy, plus full catering around the tri-state area and Florida. Specializing in events with several hundred people with no lines. You heard right. Full menu. You have to check them out on Instagram at Pizza Biza and visit them at pizzabiza.com. Pizza's my favorite food, so please invite me, Pizza Biza, on Instagram and check them out at pizzabiza.com. These are the people you want to call. Pizza Biza, I'll see you at my next event. So you all know I'm a big fan of Raquel Couture. And I'm really excited because my friend is getting married. And in addition to having bridal gowns and wedding gowns, they also have evening dresses. So Raquel Couture caters to anyone. If you're the friend, if you're the bride, if you're the sister or the parent, they are the top industry for bridal wear. They customize, tailor, and have beautiful, unique pieces that are just sitting there, ready for you to try them on. Conveniently located in Brooklyn, New York, and Lakewood, it's just like the best place to go to. And what's super cool is if you mention Stories of Hope, you get 5% off your beautiful piece. So go someplace where quality is not compromised and service is top notch so that you can look as beautiful as you deserve to feel at Raquel Couture. Check them out on Instagram to see their beautiful pieces and check them out in your local city or drive down there. It'll be worth it to find that perfect piece that you've been looking for. There's also so much about Jewish practice that's family and community centric. So if someone is by themselves for Shabbos or even with a couple friends and they're doing something that symbolically is done by a family or done with a spouse. And
what is that to you,
and for example, Friday night, Kiddush, if there's a bunch of women together, they may, making Kiddush is simply highlighting, and if you're a feminist, I'm sorry, girl, I'm sorry, but it's simply highlighting this is unnatural. There isn't a man in our life.
It doesn't feel
ordinary. There isn't a man here.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. And that's every week. That's every Chag. So you may just be like, oh, let's just skip it. Washing, doing the hamotzi again. Usually it's the male in the household. It's fine, guys. We'll just have the food. There's a lot of things that, and maybe for a man, it might be going to shul if most of the people around him are, rushing in and they're sharing how they just dropped off their kid or they have to do groceries. There's just so many elements to Jewish lifestyles that can highlight what you don't have, that in an attempt to cope and be okay. We're not even talking about like thriving, just be okay.
Right.
You feel like you need to separate from the things that are supposed to bring you closer to the community that you don't have. And if there's anything you want to share about this category that can eliminate judgment, that can provide comfort and validation, and maybe some that feel so much shame and grief while trying to navigate this chapter, don't hold back because it needs to be heard.
I'll tell you just off the bat, Erev second days of Pesach, just now, Ashley and I finished. We went to Palm Beach to PGA, to the program with Costa Rica, and those were our final days together before our week break started before the wedding.
I love the drama.
Yeah, so no, it was actually the best way to end.
No, in the best way.
Yeah.
Like it's
Just
not
a lot
simple.
of food, but amazing.
No, Baruch Hashem. And right before Yom Tov, I was with Ashley. We were downstairs just like watching people swim and families. And I said, Ashley, I have to type a message on my stories. And I wrote a message and I wrote, if you're single and Yom Tov is coming and it's hard for you, know that I'm thinking of you, that we're thinking of you. And I signed off Yoni and Ashley, and that, don't give up hope. 6 months ago on Sukkot, I was feeling that void and that pain really deeply. And 6 months later, I'm a week away from my wedding. So Hashem works in the craziest ways. I have never, so when you post a story, now people can heart a story.
Yeah.
I have never gotten on any story ever, including our engagement, so many hearts. And my DMs just started ping, ping, ping. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Thank you. I needed to hear that. And that was from boys, girls, divorced moms, divorced dads. And yeah, like I'm saying, it's not just single. It's like also for divorced people. Like, if we claim to be, and Baruch Hashem we are, if we claim to be a community that leaves no one behind, and we're there for Pidyon Shuyim, and we're there for, Bikur Cholim, and we have Hatzalah, and we have Shomrim. I mean, we got our bases covered. Then where are we for the single people that are literally like, most of them, I would say 99% are like, I want to be closer to Hashem. But like you said, when you're living in a community that everything is so community-centric.
Or family lives somewhere else. They're not in the same community
Or you
as
live out of town from your family.
Or some families are divorced. There are so many different things, and that there should all be taken into consideration. Also with the hug, there's so many, it's not just one meal. 2, 3,
or 4. It could be 4, 6.
I mean, can you imagine you go to one meal and then all of a sudden you're lonely for the rest of the meals? Like, it's very hard.
Organizing meals on Yom Tov, I think, is one of the biggest dreads that single people face, because it's not like, Shabbos, you're like, all right, I'll get invited to a friend Friday night. Shabbos day, I'll sleep in, maybe eat a kiddush, and then just go chill. And then suddenly you have a 3-day Yom Tov. And it's just like, where do I even start? And there's a certain, not shame, but like an uncomfortable thing that you have to text people, hi, I hope I'm not intruding. But I
did it all the time. I had to reach out to people and tell them, hi, by any chance, do you have
fun.
a meal open? Of course not. There's some people who would do it, and there's other people's that
and some people suffer in silence. And that's the saddest part. And that's when you hear like people are like, oh, do they keep Shabbos? And it's like, people say things like, I think they keep it, like they watch Netflix on Shabbos. And it's like, that's a common thing that I think is like, I've been hearing over the last decade.
I've been hearing it a lot also.
And people like, again, you have to keep Shabbos. There is no excuse under the sun not to keep Shabbos. That is what Hashem wants from us. But if someone who is has come to the point where they're watching Netflix on Friday night, can you imagine the level of distraction that they need to cause themselves and bring themselves to, that they made that choice? Because a lot of people that like who are from birth or not from birth, but like, the weight of Shabbos, that picking up your phone on Shabbos is a big no-no. So instead of judging them and saying, I think she low-key watches Netflix, on Shabbos, or turns on the TV before Shabbos or whatever it is. It's like, just imagine the amount of distraction that you need to put yourself through just to get through that Shabbos or that Yom Tov or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, eventually you come to a sense and you start making different life decisions, right? You start saying, okay, I'm going to surround myself with just families. I noticed myself, like when I started to hang out.
That was very brave of you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was not easy. I went from being in Tel Aviv where everyone's single to going to Pico Robertson and now hanging out with only families. But the moment I started to do that, it really allowed me to grow and to really reach out to families that sometimes most of them would tell me, oh, I didn't know you didn't have a meal. Like, I'm so happy you reached out to me. So I think it's also like, as a single person, you have to network and you have to be bold and ask someone, hey, do you have this? Can I come join you for Shabbos? Can I come join you for a little bit, for an hour, You
are very brave. Think about someone who goes to a restaurant and the waiter brings them the wrong drink and they're like, I don't want to tell him. And now you have to reach out to someone, and by default, you're admitting, I don't have a place to go.
Right.
Can you host me? Think of all the insecurities and fears and things that come up. And again, every week, not once a year.
Correct.
Every week. You are very brave.
or we all have to push ourselves, you know? So I understand the pain. And I think many people think that we share our stories and you're seeing like that, well, they got married, but there's so many things behind the scenes that people don't know. But because of that, we share it because there is pain. And like Yoni said, many people don't talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it, not to brag, to saying, it is painful. We're here with you. Now let's help each other. How can we help one another?
Yeah. And it's Sunday night now, whenever this episode is released. It's 8 p.m. Maybe it's 8:35 right now. And Shabbos is coming this week too. So if you're in a position where you can host, please pause this episode. Think of someone who probably doesn't have a place, or think of someone that comes to mind. And if that's the person that comes to your mind, maybe God's telling you they need a place. And don't assume they have plans. Don't assume if they want to, they'll reach out. Take advantage of this opportunity to enhance someone's life by welcoming them into yours and pausing this episode and inviting them. Now, welcome back to the special episode of Yoni and Ashley. Now that you sent out your Shabbos message, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing what it was like for you. I actually had a friend reach out to me Erev Pesach and tell me that she got sick for 2 days because she was so distressed over what to do. She didn't know what to do.
Horrible.
And if there's anything we can do to help that, then it's our responsibility to do so. So I want to start by asking, once you started going out, what was that experience like for you? And if we can address the fears that come up, because it's after meeting tons of people and then finding someone, it's only natural that there's fears. And I think that would be really valuable to hear.
I think for me it was, he's a singer. He's not going to be home all the time. Are you sure his life is always on, like everyone's always seeing his every move? Is this for you? And I thought it was very harsh because I said, everyone has a talent and has, something that you're good to do. And if Yonis was singing, why should he be eliminated, in other words, of having that chance of getting to know him? Because he's a singer, because he's out there. And he said, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to get to know him for who he is. And I think that was like one of my biggest things or noise that anyone could have brought. Mm-hmm. And, when I met him, that was the least of my concerns because he was very devoted. He stopped everything and he devoted every single minute he could to just get to know me and to, really focus on our dating. I don't know about you. What?
100%. I always knew I was going to do that with the person I was going to be with. But people don't believe that. They're just like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like he is who he is. And he's probably like super, self-centered around his career and whatnot. And it's just like, how do you convince people like, no, I'm not like that? You don't. You just don't. And you pray to God that your references do it for you and do it well enough.
That's probably like one of the things, most of your fears, you start to ask the references like, all right, how is he behind,
Yeah, it was very scary. With Ashley and I, like, I'll tell you, like, I had a ton of respect for Ashley when we got on our first FaceTime call. I saw that she was a class act. She was in LA, I was in New York. And I right away liked her. And I actually, like, half jokingly, I sent Bluma Florence a text. And I wrote, should I marry her? Like,
no way.
Yeah, yeah. And she's like, LOL, I think you should. Let's see.
Oh my goodness.
But I saw that she was full of, she was bright and positive, and she's such a bright light, Ashley. And
you were getting nervous.
I was because
just normal.
I'll tell you, I'll be very honest though. So like here, we're gonna go all the way in here.
Let's do it.
The truth is that I was also very used to a certain dynamic in relationships. And that is, here comes the big word. And a lot of people watching this are going to be like, oh, toxic. And it's something that I was very familiar with because a lot of people who wanted to get to know me, date me, be in a relationship with me, categorize it whatever you want, they were in it for the wrong reasons. They really were. And at the end of the day, I'm just a human being, and I can't always sit and put on my Yoni Z cap and be like, oh, it's because I'm Yoni Z. Like, I'm not arrogant like that. I don't assume that people want to, I'm like, no, they want to get to know me for me. But like, sometimes it wasn't the case. And I got very used to these toxic cycles of like the same kind of people, the same sort of like crazy action packed, like, you know, juggling, like singing and then like creating time for the relationship, but it being this struggle but the struggle is fun because you want to win it. You want to beat the system.
You want to just fireworks also. Relationships are not always just fireworks.
And everyone, like I think a lot of people, that's another thing that people look for is fireworks, and fireworks are not real. So when I met Ashley, I'm like, she's beautiful, she's kind, but she's so normal. And it literally was hard for me because I was waiting for the fight, for the struggle. And I constantly had to check in like with Bluma Florence and be like, and she's like, Yoni.
He ran everything with her, which by the way was very impressive because not any guy at his age does such thing, which shows that he was a growing person. Sorry, I just have to put that out there.
No,
it's true. It's true. It deserves to be shouted out. Thank you.
Thank you. And she told me, she's like, what does it feel like? Like, what was the first date like? How do you feel now? You're seeing her a few weeks in, we're hanging out, and I said, it feels calm. She's like, I know you're so not used to that, but that's what it's supposed to feel like. And with time, I started to thoroughly appreciate that calm. And now, like, you know, we know each other for just over 6 months. And it's like, I can't even imagine having it the other way. Like, I'm so busy with work, Baruch Hashem, and I'm running to the studio and I'm running to performances. And Ashley's like, okay, go. I'll see you later. Good luck. Or she comes with me. Instead of like that, you don't make time for me, you know, that, and then you want to prove that you do make time for them.
I think the other thing also, like, you get a fear of like, am I good enough? Or do I meet that person's expectations? And I think you have to really take a step back and say, that person's going to love me just as I am, like for who I am. I don't need to be this person that I'm not. Like, what you see is what you get, you know? And I think sometimes there's a lot of expectations of getting married. Everyone gets married. And, you know, for me, it was like, okay, I'm hanging around with a lot of people that are young, 21, they're in their 30s, they have 5 kids. I need to get married. So you're trying to do everything you can to make it work. But you have to just stay true to yourself and remember that if the person's going to love you, they're going to love you for who you are. Yeah. I think that was, I don't know.
So
well said. Yeah. It's only by being who you are that you can attract the person who's going to love you.
100%. And with Ashley, the thing that kept me going throughout the dating, even though there wasn't the fight and the struggle, was I felt like I was, for one of the first times in my life, I was allowed to be myself fully. And that is what hooked me in and kept me hooked in. Because I was like, I really don't have to put on any sort of show with this girl. And that's nice. And then I recognized, like, the first week when we were dating, she was in the city for Shabbos. And I'm the chazan, so the bima is right by the mechitza of the women's side. And then I'm standing over there, and after Kriyas Torah, they collect the chomashim, right? And I see Ashley, first week in the city, no one asked her. And I see her just walking around collecting chomashim from women and taking them back to the thing. And I was like, who does that? Like, most people would have every excuse in the book. They'd be like, I'm new here, I'm uncomfortable, don't judge me, I don't know anyone. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, that is very telling about a person's personality. It's kind of like, and I'm sure you've had this, like, the way people are with waiters in restaurants. Do they stop and say thank you? Even for the glass of water, do you just look up and go thanks, even if you're in mid-combo?
For so long, we've been taught to believe that you need to wait for things to change in order for life to get better. And you deserve to live the life of your dreams before things change. And that's what Live Better Academy is here for, enabling you to enrich your life by exploring the 5 core areas that contribute to your fulfillment and happiness. This course is here to make sure that you no longer need to wait. Exploring spirituality, health and wellness, recreation and soul, social support and environment, and your profession and ambition, my course helps you understand what you're missing, explore any gaps that need areas of improvement, and truly understand what you need to do to create the life that you deserve. It's a 5-week course, so you have to be fully committed. But the easy part is that it's all virtual. You can access it anywhere and anytime. It includes pre-recorded classes, intense coursework material to take the information, turn it into application, and ultimately transformation, and a live group class, which includes me and your peers. It's truly extraordinary, and I want you to be a part of it. So if you're interested, click the link below to schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if it's the right fit for you, or send a quick text message to the number below to schedule your free 15-minute consultation. I cannot wait to meet you and be on this journey with you so that you can finally live life better.
So yeah, can we talk about that fear of you're dating someone and you've never married someone that was the right fit for you yet.
Right.
So you have nothing to compare it to. People who aren't married love saying there's a fear of commitment. There's a fear of commitment, throwing it around as if like it's a button people can turn on and off. And I always say, trust me, there's no one that wants to get married more than a single person. And loosely just saying, well, they don't want to commit is really disrespectful and offensive to the challenges they experience. Did you experience that fear, and how did you navigate through it?
The fear of commitment of that. Yeah, I definitely did, because, you know, after so many years of dating and so many negative experiences, and I have dated people for longer periods of time, and when it ends, it's heartbreaking. And yeah, just, you know, flash like just a little note for the girls. We have hearts. They get broken. Men are more sensitive than you think. But yeah, and then it's like, okay, I'm not just looking to date this person. And Ashley was like very, very forward with me. She's like, Yoni, I'm here to get married. So, you know, like
you go, girl.
We're not here to play around.
Like I'm keeping it real with you. And I told her, I'm like, I'm not playing with you at all. I need some time, but like, I'm not here. This is not a sport.
Yeah.
And then 10 weeks later, we were engaged, which is like, in my wildest dreams, I never thought in 10 weeks I would do it.
I thought it was going to take like at least 6 months, but
yeah.
I tried to stay very firm.
No, but Ashley was also on top of me. She's like, Yoni, if you're serious, like, and if you feel like this is it, if not, then just let me go. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, no, I'm very, very serious. I need a little more time just to work through my own inner, you know, process. But like, I really like you. I enjoy spending time with you. I think that this could be something real. So just bear with me a bit, you know? And yeah, and then before we knew it, we were engaged. It was a terrifying step to take. You know, it's very funny. Like, I look back even 3 months ago at our VART compared to now. I was so frightened in a way. Here's the thing I knew. The funny thing is like, there's your head and your heart. And my head is saying, you're going to have a great life with this girl. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. She's kind, she's sweet, she's sensitive, she cares about you. You feel the same way about her. But your heart is like full of those fears from just past experiences and trauma and stuff. And, you know, I say this to my friends all the time. I'm like, you know, and guys are like, I don't know. I said, you'll never fully know. You have to know. You know when I knew? Hashem was kind to me. We went to do a hospital visit. I was in LA and Ashley was in LA. She came back to LA and I was sitting at the bedside of a little girl from LA who got terribly burned. I think it was last year, Pesach. And I went to sing for her. So I told Ashley, it was right after a concert of mine, and Ashley was with me. I said, you want to come with me to the hospital? And Ashley, and classic Ashley fashion, like, of course, let's go to the hospital. Let's cheer her up. So I went there and I literally was singing to the girl, and I was very choked up, like, because the girl was like laughing and crying and she's burned. And like, I'm just taking in the visuals, and it's like, thank you, Hashem, but oh my God, how painful, how sad. And at that moment, I made a wish. I literally made a wish. And I said, Ashley was on the other side of the girl's bed, literally like leaning over, like whispering and cheering her up. Now we're just dating for a month?
Less than a month.
Less than a month, right? And I said, Hashem, if there's anything in the world I can ever ask you for, when I look up and look into that girl's eyes, is she the one or not? And I looked up. I don't know what happened. I looked in Ashley's eyes and I knew I was going to marry her. And that was 1 month in. And I knew that I still needed time to work through but I looked in her eyes. She looked and I said, it's her. I don't know how I knew. I don't know. Hashem gave me that clarity. So by the time I walked down the chuppah.
I think that's another thing. You have to just dive in for clarity. That's
you absolutely have to. So by the time we walked down the chuppah, when Ashley, our chuppah was she had to walk like this and then come down the aisle. When she turned that corner 9 days ago and came down the aisle, I looked her dead on and I was like, that's the one. There wasn't a slightest doubt about it. But that didn't come right away. And even after I had that moment in the hospital, there were still so many days where it's like, but what about this? And what about that? And I'm FFB, grew up, and it's very, sorry.
We laugh because we said on paper, we did not make sense.
We make 0 cents on paper. We make 0
Sometimes you have to be open.
Cents.
Try.
We make 0 cents on paper. And then, when we met, it was our values aligned and very quickly. Kindness was at the top of the chart for us both.
Honesty.
Yeah.
Honest.
What else?
Chesed, always doing.
Chesed. Ashley wanted someone who was intellectually stimulated by conversation and that we would intellectually stimulate each other. And
that you're
Ashley's
receptive, that you'd ask for advice.
Yeah. And that we can have deep, meaningful conversations. And Ashley's a very deep person. And that was something that was important to me. And I always say, and here's another thing for single people, be very clear with your shadchanim.
Yes.
Say what you want.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to say what you want, or more importantly, what you need. People were sending me, and everyone experiences this in dating. So I'm just going to put it out there. Don't think that you're an anomaly, where you get resumes and you're you thought of that for me? What do you think of me that you would send me that? And it's understand, half the people are just shooting in the dark with good intentions, but shooting in the dark. Okay. The other half of people, you have to be very clear. The minute I stopped being shy and apologetic about what I wanted, and I'm going to say it right here. I'll tell you what it was. My things were kindness. I wanted someone who had good midos. That was number 1 on my list. Number 2 was someone who intellectually stimulating, someone who can challenge me in a healthy way. Ashley's not someone that I feel I have to prove anything to, but every morning when I wake up, I want to go and be a better person for us, for our future, for our life. There's a major difference. It's not I feel forced to go make money to impress her. I want, they say, you met the right person when they bring out the best in you. It's that. So it's intellectually stimulated. So good midos, intellectually stimulated. I want someone that had their certain amount of independence. Ashley has a degree in hospitality and tourism, a master's, excuse me. And Ashley has produced shows with Diplo and some other crazy people. She's very humble about it. But she's done some major, major things. And I'm just going to say it flat out. And I said, and I want a girl who's beautiful. But coming back to the point, don't be shy about what you want. And the minute I said those things, then I started seeing that the resumes that were coming in just were a lot more shayach. They made a lot more sense. But you got to say it because, so again, I hope I'm not sounding
No, you what I'm actually hearing from you is that there's 2 audience members that need to listen. One is the matchmaker, whether you're a sibling, a parent, a friend, or or that's your profession, the way you spend your time. You need to be receptive to someone's preferences. You cannot tell them what they should prefer. This is what they feel they need. Don't dull someone's sparkle if that's how they shine. Don't tell them to be someone else if that's not really who they are.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And then for the dater, you should feel empowered that you can share what you want and what you're looking for. Correct. And I'll disclose. I remember someone asked me what I was looking for, and I said, well, I want someone who's happy. And they said, well, don't you know that it says in the Gemara that man isn't happy until he finds a wife? And because I'm a little bit bold and brazen, I said, well, it also says Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. So I don't really understand that contradiction. But I think the reason why people are hesitant to share their preferences is because they've been taught to believe that they can't,
they're going to be shunned.
Their preferences are now criteria, or they're being particular. And don't listen to that. don't listen. If you have, share. And then I remember I had someone else who had asked me what I was looking for. And from experience, I just narrowed it down to 3 things.
That's
and they
it.
said, what else? And I said, I can tell you more. What? So I'm so happy you're sharing that. It's 2 people that need to listen.
Right.
The dater, feel empowered, and the listener, be humble, practice humility, and be receptive.
1,000%.
100%.
Wow, this is all really, really rich. I'm actually really curious to hear. And then I want to ask you, Ashley, so you could think about it. When was the moment when you realized you wanted to marry Yoni?
I knew it very quickly.
Apparently she knew right.
Yeah, well, we had about 5 FaceTime video, like 5 video calls before we actually met in person. Because I was in LA, he was in New York. And, he invited me to go to to Miami. I said no.
I had to be in Miami for studio recordings. And so
you were going to be there for like 2 days.
I was going to be there
so
for 2 days.
So it's going to be very rushed.
So I said, why don't we meet there? In LA, Ashley's a superstar. Everyone knows her.
She's not a superstar.
She walks into a restaurant.
No.
I am not the popular one. Okay? Which is nice, by the way.
We wanted something more quiet.
So I said, instead of me in New York, and I said, I'll fly you out to Miami and I'll put you up. I'll take care of everything. And I'll work in the studio during the day. Ashley works remote.
And let me remind you, I don't know who Yoni Z was, okay?
She did not know.
I just knew he was Yoni, okay? Like I didn't know what that came with as far as the audience and how many people know him. So it was a good idea for me to go to Miami, but I didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
And that was hurtful to Yoni. And
no, because we confirmed that we were doing it. So I already am looking up ticket, you know what I mean? And then she pulled the plug on me.
And that was hurtful, and I apologize.
It's okay. We laugh about it today.
But see, this is why I went back to Shirley Levix and I asked her, who's a dating coach, and I said, this is what happened. She goes, what? And I think that's why I tell you, it's good to have someone to guide you. And she said, you go with an open ticket. Like, you need to give it a try. And I said, you're right, I should. So it's also being vulnerable, which I think it's very, very hard. Because sometimes you want them to do everything for you, and it's not about that. It's like you both have to be vulnerable and give in and really give it a try. So, it got a little rocky there, and Yoni and I ended things. But the way Yoni ended things was very mature about it. Like, we spent an hour talking about it, and I knew he had good midos because of that. And I said, if this is how he's breaking up with me, I can only imagine that's the same thing he did with all the other girls, which many guys would probably just ghost you or tell the shotgun to tell you and break things. And so I had really admired that from him. And I think that's kind of what was already like the ding.
Because Yoni broke up with you like such a gentleman, you wanted to marry him.
It was kind of
something like that.
I said, he has really good character traits, and I want to know more about that.
I basically told her, I said, look, I'm just going to tell, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been through this a million times, and I'm about to start a new position as a chazan. It's Tishrei anyway, and there's not going to be enough time. I said, and we confirmed on something, and then you took back your word type thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to love myself for a change and just not do this type thing. But then Ashley, when we spoke on the phone, I spoke to her for an hour, and I told her, I'm like, you really seem like an amazing girl. And I even said, I don't know what will be. I just know that right now,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things don't work out the first time, but maybe when you revisit it, it might work out.
I told her, I was very, and then Ashley texted me during Sukkot. I was in Albania, and she sent me this beautiful message where she's like, Yoni, I just want to say again, I'm really sorry about what happened. I should have just came to Miami. And and I wrote to her, I'm like, you have nothing to apologize for. You're a really sweet girl. You're really, really nice, whatever. And then she basically told me, in short, she's like, hey, I might be coming to New York. And then when she came to New York, I knew when she was coming, and I texted her, I said, if you're still coming and you're here, let me know. You know what I mean? Because we both left a good taste with each other. It was just Hashem wanted it to happen 5 weeks later.
Long time sometimes,
It's unbelievable.
Who would have known? I met my husband just at the wrong time. But no, really, once I got to know him, not with the music, just to know him for who he is and And I saw how he was always going to hospitals to sing. And it was all the things he wasn't posting on Instagram or what other people don't see. And we really got to know each other. And I think that's when I knew. Also with Rabbi David Lau, we met him at shul. And I saw who he was surrounding himself with. And it was another side of Yoni that I didn't know. And I knew he was the one.
Yeah, that was that was a nice flex, like a week into meeting.
Who ended up marrying us off.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm close with the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi David Lau. And he came to Altnoy for Shabbos to speak and spend Shabbos there. And Ashley was there. And then I introduced him and he had a lot of nice things to say about me. So that was nice. The chief rabbi of Israel could tell a girl, listen, I know
you can't say no when he says that, right?
So that was, and then he looked at me and he's like, Yoni, Zuz, get it going.
Oh, I
was
that.
I was like, he's like, what do you think? And I said, I have a good feeling. Whatever. And then,
Amazing.
I called him, how long later? 10 weeks later.
Once you got engaged.
9 weeks later. And I said, yep, it's her.
I love your story for so many different reasons.
Tell us.
For so many different reasons.
It's very diverse.
You're the specialist. So you tell us what you're taking from it.
Well, before I tell you, I want to ask you a question, Yoni. Do you realize that you will never again go to a wedding or a public space and be asked for your shidduch resume or what you are looking for?
It's a huge blessing. I felt so excited when I got to go on loop and switch to matchmaking only. And I wish that for you and everyone. But I'll tell you something even deeper on what you're touching, and that is I sing differently now. I think that for years, I'm just going to be very honest. For years, I was the only singer that was Baruch Hashem in this high success category that was single. Everyone else, Baruch Hashem, all of my comrades, they were all married probably a decade ago, if not more. And it's a chip on your shoulder because everyone's watching you, your every move, and you're going to simchas and you're going to concerts, and you know that there's single girls in the crowd, and you know that every word that you're saying is being taken apart to pieces. And some people will adore you, and some people will go, "Oh, that was so weird," or "That was so that," and it's nerve-wracking. And the first gig I had, and I took Ashley with me, was a wedding in London right after we got engaged. So I took Ashley with me, and I got up there, and I sang like I never sang before. I was calm. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to think about that stuff anymore. And I think that adds a layer that most people don't have to deal with. Getting up and singing Bowie, the song I wrote for my future Kala before I met my Kala, and every time sharing that in public, and then the reactions, and then there's so much. I was also the kind of guy that I remember I once went out with a girl, and she goes, and again, this is being in public, being in the public eye leaves so much room for so much assumption. Mm-hmm. And people, so I went out with a girl, and she goes, you're a great guy, but you're not firm enough for me. And I was like, okay, if you say so, cool. And then she's like, but Yoni, I have a really good friend, and I promise you, it's such a good idea. And I'm like, okay, I'm open to that. Why not? So she messages her friend, and her friend apparently says, are you kidding? He is way too frum for me, And it's just where do I fall into, And it's some people think you're too frum because you're a Jewish singer. So you must be, some people think you must not be frum because you're a singer. And it's an impossible thing to navigate. And I did it from 18 when I started dating to 33. And it was very, very, very challenging. It was brutal. And once that gig in London, I just sang from a place I never sang before. Yeah. That was just I don't have to care what anyone thinks. I don't have to care. It's just, and it's very relieving.
I think what makes you now think it's how can we help others? We want to help others. We
1,000,000%.
Want to think of other people. And really that's what it is. Because had two people not thought of us or spent the time to, track me down for a whole month until I became available,
she was busy.
It would have never happened
when it first came up. And Rayleigh Horowitz kept on following up.
For a month.
She was, and Ashley didn't even know who it was coming from or what. I didn't even know Rayleigh was doing it. But Rayleigh was like on the case. She's like, I really think this is a good idea for Yoni. And then she just texted me one day and she's like, hey, remember Ashley? I'm like, yeah. She's like, she became available. You want to go? I'm like, all right, so let's set up the FaceTime. But God bless people like Rayleigh who were, relentless to be there for people like us.
Yeah. And I mean, when you got engaged and then when you got married, I think it was an international celebration because you're so admired and everyone was just so excited to get to know you. And I told you, you were a magnificent bride.
Thank you.
Real girl talk here. Who made your dress?
Raquel.
Okay.
Wow. I don't know what I would have,
That was quite a piece.
She was everything. I was so happy she helped me with
She is such a wonderful person and made it so seamless and easy to just do it. And Ashley was so happy working with her.
Ashley, you looked like you were royalty. Like you looked like you were next in line.
She is.
Raquel made sure I looked like royalty. I said, Raquel, I need you to make me a beautiful gown that sneezes and just makes me feel beautiful. And she listened to me the whole time and she guided me every single time. She gave us that one-on-one attention. Yoni also told her, like, he gave her some input. Like, he didn't see the dress. It was only the first time where he said, I think this material will look good with this. And she just
already knew what Ashley liked. And and Ashley came in and it's like the bride the first time, like she was like, she was like a little, it's frightening. And I'm like, all right, let me step into my masculine and try to, I'm like, okay, Ashley, I think you like these type of fabrics. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, Raquel, let's start with that.
So
and then
Raquel got the sketchbook. She started to draw with that.
And then after the first 20 minutes, I was out. But those first 20 minutes, I was just like, why don't we play with these few ideas?
Yeah.
And then
you looked like royalty and you still look like royalty. It wasn't just your wedding day with the glitz and the glam. You are beautiful. Your neshama radiates. And I'm so grateful that the two of you came in today to
thank you for
share
having
your
us.
neshama with us. Thank you so much
for inviting us.
Day number 9. It hasn't even been a full month. What an honor. Yoni and Ashley, thank you for blessing us with your company.
Thank you for having us.
How fun was that episode? I don't know how we managed to get them in only 9 days after their wedding. Huge shout out to you, Yoni and Ashley. I'm seriously grateful. I still have friends waiting to respond to my own text messages. So I don't know how we possibly got through to you, but we're so grateful that you shared your experience, your lessons, your pain, and your inspiration with us on this podcast. If it spoke to you, let Yoni and Ashley know in the comments section below. If there's something you want to see and you haven't seen it yet, please let me know by emailing me at soh@meaningfulminutes.org. If you want to partner with us, if you want to sponsor an episode in the merit of someone you love, then please let us know by emailing us at soh@meaningfulminutes.org. Thank you to every person who listens, who likes, who comments, who emails. This is really hard work and we can't do it without you. I definitely cannot do it without you. So thank you for your continued support. It goes straight to my heart, gives me energy to come back here in the studio and bring you the very best episodes of Stories of Hope.